Talk about low-budget flights, no food or movies? I'm out of here. I like running better. Welcome back, YouTube viewers, to another video. Alright, so today's video is something totally out of left field that I bet the algorithm is gonna destroy, but I wanted to make this video anyway. So, I recently watched The Lone Ranger, the 2013 movie, and I thought it was good. I liked it. Now, normally I wouldn't make a video on a movie that I just thought was good and nothing more because I wouldn't really have much to say about it. There's not really much for me to say about a 7 out of 10, but I don't know, for this one I just really felt like making a video on it because I actually do have a lot to say about it. Now, you've probably not heard of this movie, and if you have, all you'd know about it is that it was a huge bomb. It is apparently one of the biggest box office bombs of all time, on a budget of around 230 million plus a marketing budget of 150 million. It made 260 million. It lost Disney something like $200 million. They got the director of the first three Pirates of the Caribbean movies, Gore Verbinski, the producer, Jerry Bruckheimer, the screenwriters, Ted Elliott and Terry Rossio. They got Johnny Depp in it. They got Hans Zimmer to do the score. They had this massive marketing push. They had a line of really good Lego sets from what I've seen pictures of. And yet the movie was still a massive bomb. It got all sorts of Razzie Award nominations. People did not like it at all. And the movie hasn't really had any kind of reappraisal in the 12 years since it's released. You aren't really going to find any videos of people saying that, this was actually a good movie the whole time, and people just didn't get it. So I figured, you know what? I enjoyed this movie. I really like Westerns, and I thought about making a video on it. Because I think it deserves some respect. Because there are things about it that I do think it does really well. So before I continue, I'd like to remind you all to check out my Letterboxd, link in the description, like the video. And without further ado, let's do it to it and dive on into The Lone Ranger. I really like the opening of this movie. The whole framing device, it's great. So the movie begins in one of these carnivals in 1933 where they have guys saying, "Step right up and hear stories of the Wild West from the people who really lived there," which those were real things back in the 30s, 20s, because it hadn't been that long since the Wild West. So this kid wanders into some booth, and he finds this old Indian guy sitting there. And he sees the kid wearing a mask with a hat, and he says, "Kemosabe?" Kemosabe is what Tonto, the Lone Ranger's partner, would always call the Lone Ranger. Back radio, Lone Ranger. The Lone Ranger, by the way, is just a very old character. He's existed since the 30s in the radio. He was on TV in the 50s. He had a movie in the 80s. Very iconic character. So, Tonto, super old Indian, sees this kid, and he's asking, wait, who are you? And he asks the kid to trade for his popcorn. And so the kid gives him his popcorn. And he reveals that he is Tonto, the partner of the legendary Lone Ranger. And the kid's saying, "Wait, really? You're Tonto?" And he begins to tell the kid about the Lone Ranger and how they one time robbed a bank. And the kid asks, "Wait, but weren't you good guys? You didn't rob banks." And I have to say, this opening really had me intrigued because I want to know, why were the Lone Ranger and Tonto robbing a bank? We don't actually find out until the movie is almost over, which I have to say that did keep me wanting to keep watching. Also, we do get some scenes every now and then where the kid just interrupts the story at certain points and asks, "Wait, so really? That happened?" And you know what? I know some people might not like a framing device like this, but considering what kind of character the Lone Ranger is, I think this was an interesting framing device, and I really like it. So, the really beginning of the movie, of the story anyway, is on this train. So, this infamous bandit named Butch Cavendish, which is quite a name, is tied up in a train alongside Tonto, and they're being sent to some town where they will be executed. Well, I think Tonto's just going to jail, but Butch is going to be hanged for his crimes. And everything is mostly going fine, but, there are some tensions around this about how the people who are working in the town that the train is headed to are saying that we have now reached peace with the Comanche people who live here. We're going to send this train and no one's going to get hurt. But Butch's bandits show up to free him, and when they are stopped, this guy appears. John Reed. He showed up as one of the passengers in the train. He is the lawyer who is going to prosecute Butch Cavendish. And he catches Tonto trying to kill Butch, but then he stops Tonto and says, no, no, no. This man is being sent to justice. He is going to be hanged for his crimes. Don't worry. Just leave things to the professionals, to us lawyers, because we know everything and things are going just fine. Now, of course, things do not go fine because Butch's bandits return and everything goes crazy as Tonto and the Lone Ranger and John end up getting tied together in a chain as they have to run across this train. And it ends with them getting out, but the train flips over and nearly crushes them. They just barely miss it. So, Butch has escaped. The train has been destroyed. And Tonto's going to jail. And John is very mad. That's all you need to know so far. There's some other stuff that happens here. Like with, right before we get to this part, John is talking to his brother. Because his brother is pretty important, so. His brother is the main guy here. So, John and his brother Dan are part of a team of rangers who are going across the valley to find Butch Cavendish and his gang and bring them back to jail, where they will be tried for their crimes. But when they go through this valley, they all get captured, and Butch violently kills all of them. Like, this is some pretty violent stuff here. We get here. Like, just the way Butch looks and the way he acts, pretty menacing, but, well, it's not shown. He cuts out the heart of Dan, John's brother. That is some really dark stuff for a Disney movie. Because that's the thing. This is a Disney movie. It's not like Pirates of the Caribbean, which was less violent, by the way, where, yes, it's produced by Disney, but they don't tell you that. Disney's name just appears in the credits at the end. But in this movie, no. They put the Disney castle in the beginning, right before all the other credits, right before the movie starts, because they really want to tell you that this is a Disney movie. I bet they kind of regretted that after this movie flopped, which is probably why they never acknowledged this movie exists. It's not even on Disney Plus, unfortunately, but whatever. So, yeah. Dan is violently killed, and the entire rest of his company is killed. Even John. But John somehow comes back from beyond the grave, where Tonto finds him and picks him up. He tells John that he is a spirit walker. He has come from beyond the grave to help him defeat Butch Cavendish, who has been possessed by an evil spirit called Wendigo or something. And now nature is out of balance, and they need to defeat Butch so peace is restored. And it's some really weird stuff. I'm kind of 50-50 on this, honestly, because while I do think this is a good movie, like I said in the beginning, it's not a great one. I'm not entirely opposed to this movie going supernatural. I mean, all the Pirates of the Caribbean movies did, but the way it's executed here is just okay. I like the dynamic between Lone Ranger and Tonto, which I'll get to later. 'Cause, yeah, John becomes the Lone Ranger. He is the main character, after all. Although you could argue Tonto is the main character. Gotta get the most out of Johnny Depp, after all. He's the biggest star. His name is number one on the poster. So, John is told about all this stuff about him being a spirit walker and the Wendigo, and he's saying, no, 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 this is all baloney. I'm a lawyer. I gotta go catch Butch and bring him back to justice and avenge my brother. And he gets a costume. He puts on his brother's old uniform, his hat, gets a mask, and he and Tonto go to chase down some of Butch's bandits. And they end up being caught in this burning building where they nearly die. Yeah. And this all happens in the middle. I have to say the middle of the movie is probably the weakest part. It's where it's not that the movie necessarily feels slow. It's just like it feels this is the part that needed the most work, I'd say. This part's just a bit rough, but the stuff with the burning building, and they also go to this bar at one point where they meet this woman with an ivory leg. She is important. It's just I wasn't super invested in any of that stuff. A bit bored, honestly. But we do hear Tonto's backstory. So, John is brought to a Comanche Indian camp, where he's told that when everything Tonto says about Wendigo and all that stuff is baloney. What happened is that when he was a kid, he met these two guys who noticed that he had a rock of silver. They asked him where he got it. And he told them he'd only tell them where if they gave him something. So they trade him an ordinary pocket watch, which to him is amazing, for the location of this silver mine. And they find it, and it is apparently more silver than any man has ever seen before. And Tonto's just sitting there, looking at the cool pocket watch. And then when he comes home, he finds that his entire village has been killed by these two guys. And he just ended up kind of going crazy, because the name Wendigo, he didn't make that up. That comes from mythology. But he tells it to himself, no, those two guys, they were possessed by Wendigo, evil spirits. And I have to go defeat them with all this prophecy nonsense. None of that stuff is really true. He was just tricked by some really bad guys. And the thing is, though, since the Lone Ranger is a white man, like the two guys who killed Tonto's village, and the other Comanche don't really like Tonto because they think he's insane, they bury both of them in the sand in what has got to be the funniest scene in the movie. This was apparently in all the trailers. So the two of them get buried in the sand, and they yell, "Come on, you gotta let us out! We gotta help you guys!" Because apparently Butch has masterminded a scheme where the American cavalry army will fight the Comanche Indians in a war. And they're begging, come on, you gotta let us out! And the Indians just walk away. And then the Lone Ranger sees, hey look, cavalrymen, I bet they'll save us! And they just literally walk right over them with their horses. And then Tonto says, could be worse. How could this be worse? You could develop itch on your nose. I just thought that was really funny, okay? I mean, there's a reason they put this in all the trailers. It's funny if you actually watch it, which, by the way, I just want to talk about Tonto. I think Johnny Depp did a great job playing him. The only other roles I've seen of Johnny Depp are Captain Jack Sparrow and Rango. And Rango is a vocal performance, so it's a bit different, but I was worried that maybe I would just see Jack Sparrow and no one else, but no, Depp is a really good character actor. I did not see Jack Sparrow. I saw Tonto. When we get to the mine, though, so Tonto and Lone Ranger do eventually get themselves out of the sand, and they get inside the silver mine where Butch and his men are ready to steal it. And then our two heroes blow it up, or at least they cause a big explosion, knocking all the bandits away. As we have this epic shot that was on all the posters, just the two of them standing there, and for the smoke behind them. And they pick up Butch and slap him around. He sees the Lone Ranger and says, "It's you, but I killed you. I saw you die." It's just the way it's presented is just kind of silly, because that dialogue is inherently a bit cheesy. But I mean, there's dialogue almost exactly like that in the Knuckles comic. But I just love it, as our two heroes just get to beat him up. But the Lone Ranger still hasn't quite figured out what to do yet, because he could just kill Butch for being the insane murderer that he is. Tonto wants to do it. And John is even especially mad because... So earlier in the movie, it was established that John's now dead brother Dan had a wife and a son. And they're kind of all alone, and they were also captured by Butch's men. So John is screaming, "All right, where are they? Tell me!" And he refuses to tell. But instead of letting Tonto just shoot Butch, finally, he still says no. He's got to be taken to justice, to the law. He deserves to be hanged, sure, but we got to go through due process. But then we get to the other villain of the movie. So the Lone Ranger and Tonto kind of split up, second act breakup. Well, they don't really split up. They just kind of get into an argument. But John takes Butch to this guy who was shown a bit in the beginning, who runs the trains. Big rich guy. He's found Rebecca and Danny, who were Dan's the wife and son. He's saved them. He's saying, this is a big deal. The first train that connects Texas with the rest of the country. This train is going into the future. And the only people who really get power are those who control the future. Because as it turns out, this guy is also a villain. Because in a genuinely pretty good twist, I'd say. He is the brother of Butch Cavendish. Him and Butch were the two guys who killed Tonto's village and found the location of the silver mine. And he wants to kill John for capturing Butch. And because he wants to use the train to go back to the silver mine, get all of it, and he had Butch set up the cavalrymen to fight the Indians so the Indians would all be wiped out and there'd be no one to stop him. It's a bit convoluted, but it makes more sense if you actually just watch it. And aboard the train, there's a machine gun, and the train kills all the Indians, and Lone Ranger and Tonto are really beat up. And everything just seems like they're all kind of doomed. But and things do start really get set up with this guy because, okay, by the way, I don't remember this villain's name. I remember everything he did, I just don't remember his name, but he's brought the train to this town and he says, soon this train is going to go on its first ride. He's telling the people of this town it's going to be a big deal. We're going into the future. He's even starting to manipulate these other rich people in this area, where he kills one of them and says, "Okay, now you're going to nominate me as the chairman, the leader of your board of directors, or not?" Because he wants to make sure he has control of all the trains so that no one can stop him from getting all the silver and controlling the future of the West, I guess. But meanwhile, the Lone Ranger and Tonto have other plans because we finally find out why they were robbing a bank. Turns out they were robbing a bank that was full of dynamite, nitroglycerin, that sort of thing. Because they're going to use it to attack. They're going to blow up one of the bridges that the train is going to go on. And they actually do. Except the bridge is way toward the end of the trail, so by the time the train actually gets to it, it would take a while. And this is where we get into the absolutely awesome climax. I had issues with this movie, even though I wasn't enjoying it before, but man, this climax, great stuff. Can't even imagine how cool it would have been to see it in a movie theater. If you're not going to watch this movie, fair enough, but you should just go on YouTube and look up the climax of the train. So, if there's one piece of music that I'm sure you've heard before, it is the William Tell Overture. And since it was in the public domain, since it's such an old song, it was used in the Lone Ranger's radio show back in the 30s. It was used on his TV show. It was used on the movie in the 80s. And at this part is where it finally plays in the movie. And I have to admit, its use is really clever. The train goes off with the villains aboard. They're going to kill Rebecca and Danny. And the Lone Ranger gets on his horse, and the William Tell Overture starts playing as he chases after the train. You got Tonto on board trying to help the people. And he sees that some of the train cars collide with each other. And you even get the Lone Ranger having his final showdown with Butch Cavendish. He's finally ready to shoot him, as he says, I want to leave things up to the law. But the law of this area, since it's the Wild West, there's not really any law, is so corrupt, I'm going to have to shoot you. But he's out of bullets. So he's going to have a hand-to-hand fight with Butch, except Butch has a knife. And he says to him, "Oh, please, lawyer. What did you do? Box in law school?" Which he actually mentioned earlier. He says, "Yeah, I did." And the Lone Ranger jumps off the train jumps off this car as the car gets split to its side with Butch still on it. And another car comes in, and boom, the train explodes with Butch on it. And the William Tell Overture really hits into high gear as it goes ba-da-dum, 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 as he explodes. Great villain death. But things still aren't quite over just yet, as Tonto meets Butch's evil brother on top of the train, as he reveals that he was the Indian who told him the location of the silver mine. And he's here to finally get justice onto him. Except he doesn't quite kill him. What he does instead is leaves him on board the train as it's about to hit the bridge, where it quickly falls off the bridge into the water and explodes in spectacular fashion. If this reminds you of Mission Impossible: Dead Reckoning, there's a reason it should. Tom Cruise specifically said that movie was based on the the movie The General from 1926. That's one of the most influential movies of all time, and it's pretty clear this also took some inspiration from that. If you want to know how to use a train in an action scene, that's how you do it. You have it fall off a bridge and explode. And so we finally get to the end. The town is saved, and they offer to give the Lone Ranger a medal. But they want to know who he is. He says he can't take off the mask, though, as he rides off into the sunset with the day saved, ready to go help some other people. And we go back to the present of 1933, where Tonto is just fully dressed up in a suit now. Like, throughout the scenes where you see him with the kid, he just slowly starts putting on more clothes. So now he's holding a suitcase and everything. As the carnival is closing, and the kid asks Tonto, "Well, I have to ask, were everything about Wendigo, the masked man of justice, was that the Lone Ranger, the train, was all of that really true?" And he says, up to you to decide." And he hands him the Lone Ranger's famous silver bullet. And then we get to one final scene where the Lone Ranger finally lets out his famous catchphrase, "Hi ho, Silver!" Because Silver is the name of his horse. The movie does kind of make fun of it, which I don't like, where Tonto tells him, "Never say that again." Point is, though, the movie ends on a high note of adventure, and during the credits we get to see Tonto walking away into the sunset. Now, before I get to the conclusion, I want to talk about the 1981 movie, The Legend of the Lone Ranger. I saw this movie about a year or two ago. I thought it was okay, a 6 out of 10. I thought the new one was this one was a 7, but this old one was a 6. The problem with this one for me, I do still think it might be worth a watch, but for me the problem is that it feels like two movies in one, and neither of them really fit together that well. You get the Lone Ranger's origin, and you get the stuff with him being the Lone Ranger, but it doesn't mesh together very well. And you also have the fact that, aside from Christopher Lloyd playing Butch Cavendish, who did a great job, by the way, the rest of the actors don't do that good a job. They aren't bad, but they just feel a bit bored. Like, there's this one part where Tonto gives this really good speech about trusting the Lone Ranger. He tells his whole tribe, "You say you can't trust him because he's a white man." And I get it, they have slaughtered some of us. But this man is a hero. He's helped us through all these years. You're just going to say, "Oh, we can't help him? Are we no better than the people who hated us?" But the acting is just so it doesn't really leave much of an impact. But it has a pretty cool climax, so not a bad movie, just an okay one. It's really sad to me that this movie was such a big box office bomb. I get that this was trying to be the next Pirates of the Caribbean. They brought in all the exact same crew, and I understand that being that good, that is a really high bar, the next Pirates of the Caribbean. Like, how are you supposed to replicate the success of a multi-billion-dollar franchise, even if you have the same people working on it? But still, I don't think this movie deserved to flop. I think it should. I think if I had gotten a sequel could have been much better. And I already liked this one. Then again, I'm not really sure what you could have done for a sequel because I guess you could have another adventure. But how are you supposed to top that climax with the train? Do you go supernatural again? Who knows? They did want this to be a franchise starter, and I love the dynamic between the Lone Ranger and Tonto in this movie. They both have really good banter, and both actors clearly were really trying their best here. And the music was good. The action scenes were pretty good. I mean, there are problems. I haven't mentioned this before, but I guess I kind of mentioned that the movie's a bit violent in certain parts. Like, I understand it's going to be violent, but boy, that bit with Butch Cavendish cutting out a guy's heart is just going too far, even if it's not on screen. Also, the movie is just really gray. Everything looks gray. There's no color. And that just makes the scenes that are meant to look dark look even darker. Still, not a bad movie. And a good one that really deserved better. I hope that one day people can look at this and say, you know what, that wasn't so bad, even if they don't end up loving it. Because I didn't love it, but I still thought it was good. And, well, it's true that this was never going to be the next Pirates of the Caribbean. After all, you can't catch lightning in a bottle twice, as the saying goes. But you know what? Even if you can't catch a storm twice, maybe you could catch a bolt. That's all for now, and remember to stay way past cool.